Hello everyone, it's Romania Black, and it's the penultimate episode of Season 3, Part 1, so this feels warranted. Warranted indeed, because last episode was insane, to say the least. It's my longest talk I've ever done with anything on this channel besides the recap videos, and it was a perfect episode. I'm really, really sad that Kenny is gone, because Kenny, I'm not gonna lie, just a spoiler for the recap, Kenny is like S tier. There's no getting around it. He's one of my favorite characters in this show now. Hardcore shipping him and Uri. It's too good. But y'all, I have lots of comments, so lots of things to work through, because as I am recording this, episode 10 came out yesterday on Patreon, and episode 8 came out on YouTube, so I'm not very far ahead of y'all, not very far ahead at all, but I needed to record this before Thanksgiving and record this before the weekend, so it can be up on Patreon, but I have lots of comments. I find it very fitting that as I'm recording this, Thanksgiving in the United States is tomorrow, and y'all were commenting on YouTube and Patreon that Rod Reese's Titan form is called the Turkey Titan. I couldn't have timed this better if I tried. I really couldn't have. I was like, oh, the Turkey Titan. Okay, some of you said he looks like a turkey in the manga. I'm excited to get to that point, most definitely. But there's lots of things to comment on. I found out that Kaven's first name is Trout in the supplemental materials, so I'm going to note that for the recap. Thank you. But lots of things being noted. El Ribeiro 97 noting that, and several of you pointed this out, but I saw El's comment first, that Rod's mouth, the Titan serum has to get into the bloodstream. And so Rod Reese's mouth had all the cuts from Kenny, and that's how this... So it's kind of funny that Kenny is his own... It's ironic. Kenny is his own worst enemy. And we established that earlier on in this series, the idea that you are your own worst enemy. Kenny really is, because if you think about it, Kenny is the cause of his own death. Kenny is the one that took the knife and did the cuts in Rod's mouth. When Rod drank the serum, it got into his bloodstream, caused him to become the Titan, caused the cave-in. Cave-in, boom, got her, caused the cave-in that hit Kenny. So really, Kenny's injuries, with the exception of like Levi's cut across his abdomen, Kenny's injuries were pretty much caused by himself, inadvertently, and how he treated Rod. So self-fulfilling prophecy, right? But yeah, I'm glad that y'all noted that Titans can't gain the shifter powers unless they do the nape, but they can still become a Titan by ingesting. So that's good to know. Good world building things to know. So yeah, a lot of people were talking about Rod Reese, and we'll talk a little bit after the reaction. I've got some notes about Rod and about Alma's death that I want to talk about. Some people were really noting that the miracle that happened that Uri was talking about in the last episode, I may have been looking too deep into it, that the miracle itself was just that him and Kenny became friends. It's like, aw. But yeah, so the idea, though, that this, some people pointed out too, that the King's Will really does work on anybody that's of Reese blood. And so it basically makes them become pacifists, and they just don't want to do anything or try to stop the Titans or save humanity. So they just become pacifists like the first king, which is interesting. So that kind of messes with my theory that Eren's related to the Reese family then, but we'll talk about that more in the recap and probably in this discussion as well. I did want to note a few things, that in the manga, Malguum said that Historia thought not only of Ymir but also of Frida, and that Frida broke down in the manga saying that all of them were sinners. And I find that interesting because we go back to episode 6 where it's called Sin. So that's interesting. We'll talk about other things as well, but I'm trying to see if I missed any more notes about Rod Reese. Lots of things for the recap video. The idea that the Ackermans need to be loyal to someone and protect someone. I love that. It's almost like a genetic thing where the Ackermans want to protect people. So you have Mikasa wanting to protect Eren. You have Levi wanting to protect Erwin. You have Kenny wanting to protect Uri. So it's like they have a natural tendency to become loyal to people and protect them, and it's related to them being protectors of the king. So funny stuff. And 2 of them were protecting royalty. It's just Erwin I don't think is royalty, so Levi was just protecting them. But if my theory about Eren being related to the royal family is true, Levi has been pretty compassionate and protective of Levi, or of Eren, in a sense. So maybe that holds true. I don't know. I'm just pointing it out there. But Tunga and several others on YouTube and Patreon noted that as well. And so just, yeah, the idea that Kenny just wanted to be understood. He wanted to understand Uri's perspective and become compassionate like Uri. And the problem was he was compassionate all along. He just was so self-loathing and thought he was such trash that he couldn't see it. But him being kind to Uri and him being compassionate to Levi, it was proving itself. He just couldn't see it. Kenny's such a tragic character, and we'll talk about him in the recap, but that episode just kind of came out of nowhere, and just, I expected at some point for us to get Kenny backstory. I had that question like early on in this season, but I didn't expect it to come this soon, and I didn't expect it to be like tied in with all the world building that it was. It was like Isayama, dude, just giving us all these themes and symbolism and everything in one episode. It was nearly 2 hours of me talking about it, so, it's great. Nathalie also pointed out, too, that right now, we really only have these Titans, and I'm going to probably bring out Whiteboard Coon and talk about it then, but noting that the Coordinate and the Founding Titan are, in fact, the same Titan. So I'm like, okay, cool, we get this cemented. So we have the Founding Titan, we have the Beast Titan, we have the Colossal Titan, we have the Armored Titan, we have the Female Titan, and we have whatever Ymir and Marcel were, and then we have whatever Grisha / Eren was. So, or Eren's Titan now, technically. So we have these 7 Titans. And as far as we know, I'm really curious now, because with the Beast Titan and Bertolt and Reiner training at Shiganshina, I'm really curious, are there more Titan shifters, or is it really just those 7 or 8? I mean, maybe there's one more in the woodwork somewhere, but are we really limiting the Titan shifters to the ones being left? Which the other Titan shifters could be in the wall, for all we know. They could be the Titans in the walls, because they had like the muscular faces. They could be the ones in the wall, all the Titan shifters that are left. We don't know, but I'm starting to question whether, because at the beginning of this season, I'm like, oh, there's a whole city of Titan shifters, but I'm thinking maybe we're down to like 8 or 9 or maybe a dozen at the most. And it's just very scarce. And the rest of the Titan shifters are either inside the walls or they don't exist anymore. I don't know. But yeah, really interesting stuff. The rest of my notes on here, I don't want to talk about until we watch the episode, because again, the last 3 or 4 episodes, I have no clue what's going to happen. I don't know. We ended the last episode with that preview of Bertolt and Reiner and the Beast Titan. I'm like, okay, are we going to cut back to them this episode because it's the penultimate episode? Or are we just going to forget about them till part 2? I'm like, I don't know. We're setting up a lot of things. Historia is now queen. She's been crowned. I'm going to talk about this in the recap and probably in this discussion, but a lot of you were pointing out, because at first I was like, oh, Erwin's not going to agree with Historia because she's kind of like a rogue figure. She kind of just, I do what I want. Like she has that Cartman, I do what I want kind of mentality. But a lot of you pointed out that she wants to uncover the truth just like Erwin does. And I agree with that Erwin has reason to probably be on the same terms with her and like her as queen. My issue is she established to Eren that she's like, we don't want to exterminate the Titans. Nah, who wants to do that bullshit? So I'm like, okay, she doesn't want to kill the Titans because Ymir's one of them and she wants to learn more about them. That kind of flies a little bit in the face of what the Survey Corps is all about. So I'm like, is that gonna butt heads there? Because Erwin and Historia both want to know the truth. It's just when they find that truth, is Erwin still going to want to destroy the Titans like what the Survey Corps has been doing? Or are they going to be like Historia and she'd be like, exterminate the Titans? Nah, we're gonna figure them all out and work with them. So I don't know. This episode's called Bystander, which is usually just somebody that's off to the side. So I don't know. And the Beast Titan was very much adopting kind of a pacifist approach too, saying, oh, we're not going to charge in. We're going to wait for them to come to us. It's like, oh. But yeah, so I've got notes. We'll talk about them, but it's the penultimate episode of the midseason. So y'all told me going into this part 1, you're like, well, you should do a recap of part 1 because it's one arc. And then part 2 is a different arc. And I'm like, so we're at the penultimate episode before the end of this arc. So I'm nervous and I poured probably more wine than I needed to, but I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure I'll be happy that I did that once this episode's over. So yeah, no clue what's going to happen. We're just going to find out. We're just going to dive right in. I've talked for 10 minutes. Why not? So let's do this, shall we? We are going to start technically episode 48, but episode 11 of season 3. of Attack on Titan, and we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1. Let's do this, y'all. Validation! Validation! Oh, Keith! Oh my god. Oh, sweet, sweet episode. Sweet, sweet penultimate episode. Oh my god, yes! You know when you have a gut feeling and it happens and it's right and you're like, ugh. Ever since we had that one shot of Keith, I was like, was Keith helping him? Did Keith go back and get Eren and take him back? I wanted answers. Y'all were like, Romania, just chill. You're gonna get your answers. And we finally did. This episode. Isayama, what are you doing back-to-back character exposition episodes? What? How? Just how? Oh my god. This episode was so satisfying because it tied up so many things. It gave us new questions. It gave us answers. Finally, I mean, from Eren's perspective, it answers questions. A lot of my notes are about, there's some about Carla. There's a few notes about Carla, but most of them are about Rod. So we'll probably just go ahead and get those out of the way now before we dive into this. And Historia's at the front of this episode, so it's fitting that we'll talk about Rod a little bit and then dive into Historia, because that whole first part, this episode was kind of like two halves. Like the first half was dealing with 2 months after the coronation. So it's been 2 months since Historia was crowned queen. So there's been stuff happening in the last 2 months. Yay. And so we're going to talk about that. That's the first third of the episode. And the other 2/3 was dealing with Keith's story. Holy crap. You expect when a character like Kenny comes onto the scene, you're like, okay, this character that is crazy and enigmatic and eccentric and just kind of larger than life, you expect a character like Kenny to have a big backstory. And when you find out that he's tied to Levi, you're like, oh, this is going to be a major backstory. So you expect that as an audience member, or you hope for it anyway, because sometimes in narratives you get a big character like Kenny and you don't ever find anything out about him and you're like, well, that sucked. But with Kenny, Isayama does a masterful job of weaving him into the plot. We get his backstory. We get enough about Kenny that we're good. We know what we need to know. I didn't see this backstory with Keith coming from a mile away. I was like, I knew eventually from episode 6 that we'd have to tie back to Keith somehow, but I thought it was going to be the very last scene of Keith helping Grisha. I thought that was going to be it. No, we get all this tie-in, and a lot of you were talking about in No Regrets. I kept thinking, I was like, well, who is the commander of Erwin's troop in No Regrets? And you all were like, oh, that's Keith. And I was like, Keith? That doesn't look like Keith. But it's because he had hair. Keith has aged a lot over the course of this series. He's aged considerably. He's had a lot of stress. A lot of things have aged him. And now he doesn't have hair, but back then he did. But it's always the eyes. Back in episode 6, Keith's eyes give him away because he has these golden eyes and they're always kind of sunk in. And during episode 3 of season 1, they were really sunk in. And so it was he just gets more and more stressed as time goes on and falls more and more into despair. But he was the one that rigged the equipment. Way back in season 1, when I was watching season 1, and those of you that have been watching me do these reactions since the beginning of season 1, when we got to episode 3, a lot of you, I will always remember, there was a comment, I forget who made it, but somebody was like, man, when you watch this in hindsight, episode 3 is a lot different. I've got to go back and watch it now, because now knowing that it was Keith that rigged it this whole time, I thought it was Jean way back in the day. No, it was Keith. To prove that Eren was special. Oh my god! Ugh, this episode, Whiteboard Coon's gonna have to come out in a minute. It's gonna have to come out in a minute because there's just things to map out. But oh my god, this episode was so freaking good. I'm gonna tell you right now, picking a favorite episode in the recap from this season is going to be nigh impossible because there's so many good episodes and they're all so good for different reasons. Ranking this season is hard. Season 1, season 2, I could rank them. I changed my mind since then, now that I have new context. But at the time, I was like, I can rank these. And then when y'all started pointing out different things that you liked about different episodes, I was like, that's harder. This season, there's maybe 2 or 3 episodes I can see clearly at the bottom so far that I'm like, they were good. But then there's 6 or 7 episodes that I'm like, oh god, they're really good. This episode. Oh, questions about Grisha and Eren's heritage, Eren's parents. I said back in season 2 recap, I wanted Grisha and Carla flashbacks. We getting them. We finally getting them. And it's so worth it. So worth the wait. So, okay. All right. Let's do this. Let me take a sip of wine. Drinking this was a bad idea. Because I'm all like wired. I'm all jacked up on Mountain Dew. All right. We need to talk about this. So before we get proper into this episode, I got to go over some notes because otherwise I won't get to them because there's so much that's happening in this episode. So as we're tying into Historia, we're going to tie into this episode, but let me talk a little bit about the stuff about Rod Reese that I was going to note at the beginning of this episode and I just hadn't got to it yet. I had this idea. So basically, a few notes that some of y'all pointed out about Rod Reese. Again, Rod Reese is a pitiful figure, and I'll talk about him more in depth in the recap because my views of Rod Reese are pretty complex, especially after last episode when we got so much more context with him. But I did want to go ahead and note before I forget about it that the idea of Rod connecting to Alma's death, because Rod did seem like he confided in Alma a lot. Alma just really did not like her position once she had Historia. She was regretting that decision, and she was not #no regrets. She was deeply regretting that decision and was just not liking that she had to be like put out on this farm and monitored. She didn't like that. Like her freedom was taken away. She was put in her own bird cage, so to speak, and she didn't like it. But a lot of you were talking about how Rod really may not have had a lot of decision making in the death of Alma because Kenny, one of you pointed out, and I've got to put that I think CW on Patreon was noting that because Rod wasn't the true king, because he wasn't like Frida and Uri and had the founding Titan powers, Rod wasn't a true king. So a lot of the decision making went to the council, and that this was established in the manga, which I will eventually read. But that the council started making a lot of the decisions. So that explains why early on in this season we see the fake King Fritz, but we also see the 4 council members. We see Gerald and the others and Rod Reese making the decisions because the other 4 council members, like the Wall, religious leader, and the other 3 are all involved in the decision-making process, not just Rod. So that makes sense. So y'all were pointing out, CW I think specifically, that Alma's death was probably a choice by the nobles and the Wallist religion because she wasn't part of the royal family. It was kind of like your king, even though he's like disguised as a noble, is bringing in this mistress with this bastard child, quote unquote. And the Wallist and nobles were like, oh, no, we can't have that. She's not noble blood. This little Historia girl is not fully noble blood. No, we can't have her around. And so I'm sure Kenny simultaneously was like, oh no, Historia has Reese blood, so she could potentially become the coordinate. We don't want that. So that explains a lot why they killed Alma, and because they wanted to get rid of her because she wasn't nobility. But also Kenny was like, let's get rid of Historia too while we're at it so that we don't have another potential person to come up and take the throne. Makes sense. And then Rod managed to talk them all out of killing Historia, although they killed Alma. But the way CW talked was that Rod probably wanted to like create a 2.0 royal family with Alma and Historia, and it just didn't work out. So that's good to note. I'm glad that we got that out of the way, that was talked about as well. And then just Rod as... I'm going to talk about this in the recap, but just viewing Rod as kind of like a metaphor for organized religion. That it's just his viewpoints and everything, and we'll connect that with Uri and everything. But yeah, this episode, it's such a weird episode because it's the penultimate episode of the mid-season. We just ended the last episode with the Beast Titan prepping Reiner and Bertolt for Eren to come to them, and there's going to be another battle. And in this episode, completely like sidetracked and was like, hey, before we have this big battle, before we end this mid-season, we need to get some answers. And we need to talk about a couple things with old Keith and get that out on the table. And the way that it ends this episode, oh my God, the message. I'm going to talk about Eren in the recap, but Eren like is a whole new character in this 3rd season. I'll be honest with y'all, like I've had Eren as S tier and A rank, and I've been like, yeah, he's a great character, but Eren's not really been in my top 5 this series. I was like, well, he's our protagonist, but there's so many other characters. In this season, Eren's like shot up way, like the character development, the depth, it's crazy because Isayama's like, oh yeah, Eren is our main character. Maybe we should have some focus on him while we're at it. And it's like, It's just so good. Like, I absolutely love it. I'm going to make a little comment thing here about, just Eren and his character development. I'll tell y'all right now, I'm editing the recap notes, and for season 2's recap, season 1 recap was 5 pages. Season 2's was 9 pages. I'm at 12 pages for the recap notes for season 3 part 1. I don't have any songs to react to this time, so a good chunk of the last recap review was songs. That won't happen in this time, but it's going to be replaced with all this discussion. It's crazy. So yeah, okay, let's go through this episode. I've wasted 10 minutes just freaking out because, oh my god. And of course it starts with the OP. It starts with the OP because of course it does. Of course it does. As soon as it started there, I was like, I need some more wine because this episode's going to be crazy, right? And here's the thing. This is one of the first episodes. Episode 1 did this. Episode 1 ended without the ED. It was just the end credits. This episode ended without the ED. It was just the end credits and the song. So I'm like, okay, we're getting closer to that whole no OP situation. I'm not a fan. And one of y'all noted in the comments, you were like, imagine an episode that was just 99% silent and no sound. I was like, how dare you? How dare you put that thought in my head? Because I'm gonna flip out if we have that. I'm just gonna pause the video, go get the ice cream out of the freezer, come back and just eat it while watching the reaction. Mark my words. Mark it down now. If that happens and there's just no sound at all, nothing, I'm just gonna go get the ice cream, come back and be like, let's do this. Let's effing do this. So, I'm sorry y'all that I'm so giddy, but this episode completely came out of left field and I was like, what is even happening? So, okay. And then Eren, the mixture of his mother and father. Eren, this whole episode was such a combination of his mom and dad, such a combination of the two of them. And oh my god, we're going to talk about Keith, aka Professor Snape 2.0. Right? We're going to talk about him. Being a total Snape in this series, if you've ever read Harry Potter, being a total Snape. But, not quite. He didn't work for the enemy, but definitely he loved Carla. Keith loved Carla, and it just didn't. And we're going to tie with the parallels with him and Erwin. I need to comment on that. Erwin and Keith. And the parallels with Grisha and Niall. Because we established that Erwin and Niall loved the same woman. That's like a manga only thing. But that they loved the same woman, and she ended up marrying Niall because he joined the military police. And the Survey Corps, if you're in the Survey Corps, you're not getting married, basically is how it's going to be. You're not settling down because you've chosen like the special ops. You've chosen the most dangerous job in the entire kingdom. You're not going to be able to settle down because chances are you're going to die. So Erwin chose to climb the ladder and keep going to seek the truth. Erwin chose the truth over married life. He chose the truth. So there's a big difference between Keith and Erwin. And Keith considers Erwin to be one of the special ones, one of the chosen few. And Keith, to realize how self-loathing Keith is and how much he hates himself because he's not special, that's crazy. It's fitting that we do this narrative right after Kenny, because Kenny thought of himself as trash and garbage, and Kenny thought that he wasn't worthy of love or compassion. And so when Uri gives him compassion, he's like, oh. And so this revelation with Kenny that everyone's drunk on something, right? Something, they're a slave to something to help them survive. And we'll talk about all that in the recap too. But with Keith is different than Kenny because Kenny's like, I'm trash, but I know I'm good at being trash. So I'm going to keep being bad. He's like, I'm bad, but I know I'm good at it. So I'm going to keep doing it. Keith didn't think he was good at anything. He tried to convince himself at first, but then he realized he wasn't special. And so he just kind of gave up and gave the commanding position over to Erwin and then became the trainer of the cadets. And he just settled for that. But the difference is Erwin, I think he let Niall go with the girl, with Maria. And Erwin settled for being like, Erwin chose the truth over a married, content, normal life. Erwin was like, no, my mission is to find out the truth. So all that other junk can wait. And the sad thing is, I don't think it'll ever happen for Erwin, except, if you ship him and Levi together, obviously. But I don't think that'll ever happen for Erwin because he's always going to be seeking the truth. And that's such a dangerous line of work that he doesn't have time or the ability to settle. Whereas in Keith's position, Keith, I think, did want to settle with Carla, but she fell in love with Grisha instead. And because he was in the Survey Corps and constantly gone on missions, it just didn't happen. And like that moment where he comes up to her and she has Eren as a baby, and he's like, oh my God. And Eren at the time is literally like a year or two old. And she's like, oh, you didn't hear the news. And it's like, Eren's like a fully grown baby, like a year-old toddler. And Keith is like, oh yeah, And so it's just that idea. And now you see why Carla didn't want Eren to join the Survey Corps, because she saw through Keith what that was like that devastation, that loss that they suffered. So of course she didn't want Eren to go through the same thing. So it's all the connections and tying back to season 1. It's so good. It's so good. But yeah, so I'm ending this OP. I paused it. I was going to note, I commented on it in the reaction, but the end of the OP is a shoe falling, presumably Historia's shoe, and then the basement key right after it. So we have one episode left of this OP. And I know a lot of you are like, well, not all the imagery is going to show up from the OP. We don't have dinosaurs like in the second OP. And I'm like, fair enough. But I find it curious that we've had a lot of ties together between Historia and Eren. And we have the tie of the shoe dropping and the basement key. So I'm like, one shoe fell. Now we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's like Isayama, we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. When's it going to happen? I think it's going to happen next episode because it's a mid-season finale. Why wouldn't it happen next episode? Sure. But that's so interesting. And the whole tie into the basement key. I'm so glad we got confirmation. I'm going to talk about it later when we get to the point in the episode going back through this. But I'm so glad that we got confirmation that Keith helped bring Eren back. That's been bugging me since episode 6. It's been in the back of my head. And I've been telling myself, y'all were like, have faith. Isayama's going to explain it. And I was like, I know, but I just want to know for sure. It is such a big breath of air knowing that question is answered. To know that Keith was responsible for helping Eren get back. I'm like, thank you. But he didn't know about Eren transforming into the coordinate. He didn't know about Eren transforming into a Titan. He didn't know about Eren becoming the coordinate. I'm assuming he knew Grisha died because he probably found his arm there. You know, their arm was like laying in the grass. So I'm sure he put 2 and 2 together and was like, somehow Eren made it out alive. Don't know how, but he did. But he knew that Eren was orphaned. So, and he just brought him back. So yeah, so I'm glad we got confirmation all about that. And that kind of puts Keith in like an innocent, he's a bystander. He's literally just the guy that's been standing on the sidelines, slowly making the entire exposition happen. Keith, in some ways, Keith is responsible for this whole story. Carla wouldn't have met Grisha without Keith. Grisha wouldn't have learned about the scouts and everything without Keith. Eren wouldn't have... Well, Keith ended up tampering with the gear, but Keith is responsible for so much in this series. It's kind of insane. It's kind of crazy, right? Who knew? Who knew? Keith, as a bystander, has so much impact on the plot of this entire series. It's kind of insane. Huh. Okay. All right. Well, before we go any further, I'm going to have to bring Whiteboard Coon out because we're going to need it. Okay. All right. So Whiteboard Coon is primed and ready to go. Episode 48, Bystander. Oh my God. This season's been so good. So yeah, Historia. So we go back to this compound that has been created on the farm. This giant stable, and there's cows and there's horses. And I loved the first part of this episode. I was like, if this is as good as the episode gets, I'm on board. Sure. I'm a farm gal from a rural area. I relate a lot to Historia in this. I absolutely love it. So the idea is she's chasing these kids around. And we get our 3 guys in their regular clothes. We got Jean in this nice trench with the nice collar and the shirt and the vest, looking preppy as hell. Jean looked kind of different in this episode. I think it's his hair. The way that his hair lays, it makes his face look longer. I think that he just needs a trim. Jean needs a hashtag Jean needs a haircut in this because makes his face look more horse-like. It makes it look longer. But he says, not quite the queen I was expecting. And then we have Armin in a similar jacket to Jean with the sweater vest and everything. And then Eren's in his classic hoodie and peasant shirt, as Eren constantly wears. But yeah, her with the kids. It's been 2 months since she's been crowned. Yeah. And she's better suited to run an orphanage. But here's the thing. Historia's whole childhood, half of it, she didn't even remember because Frida deleted her memory. And the other half, she was being emotionally shunned and abused by her mother. So Historia didn't really even have a childhood. So of course, it makes total sense that she would want these kids to be happy and safe when she herself couldn't have been at the time. Because she saw some shit. She even saw her mom die when she was those kids' age. And then Armin's like, do you know what the people are calling her? The cattle farming goddess. Yeah, because she's from the sticks. And then Jean's saying, we finally got a goddess among us. And you know what's funny about this? If you go back to Jean's OVA from season 1, there's a scene where they're all pretending to be titans and biting their hands. And Historia looks like a goddess. She has like the giant wings and she's in all white. Foreshadowing? Yep, pretty sure. I love it. A goddess among us. And then Jean's face! Jean's like horse face. He's like, haha, Eren. He's like, at this rate, no one will remember the chump who plugged up Trost, yeah? Which is, it's such like a, Jean's trying to be mean, but he's also trying to be playful with Eren and being like, oh, at this rate, Historia's going to outshine you. Nobody's going to remember your good deeds because they're all going to remember Historia, huh? And Jean just being, and Eren's like, dude. Or Armin's like, dude. And Jean's like, uh-huh. And then Eren, like, is having none of it. And then he just calls back. He's like, one of the reasons Historia decided to become queen was to do all this. And Jean's like, I love that face. I love that Jean's like, I'm trying to make a joke with you, dude. And you're like Buzzkill City. It's great. It's great. And then, yeah, you see Connie and Sasha and Mikasa. I like that the kids are playing with Connie and Sasha, and they're just, like, grabbing all onto them. And Connie and Sasha are, like, just taking it. They're like, no one's playing with Mikasa. No one's playing with Mikasa. Mikasa's, like, sternly looking at him like, I'm trying to get things done so I can help Eren. We'll talk about Mikasa. But, yeah, I love it. No, like, the one kid, she's not even touching Mikasa. They're like, don't even... Because she's got all the feed sacks on her. It's like, don't even mess with me. Okay. So we cut to the captain supporting her. So, okay, what a turn of events. Because a lot of you commented how in the manga, Levi like tried to choke Historia in the manga. And that seems like so crazy. Like, I can't wait to see that part. But a lot of you were commenting on her like on Levi choking her. Funny that, cut to this episode. And Historia's trying to say, get the kids out from underground and put them in this orphanage where they can like run outside and be away from underground. Of course Levi would support that. Of course he would, because Levi knows how not only dangerous it is underground, but how unhealthy it is. Like, those people die down there. So of course he would support this. He was raised underground, so of course the captain supported her. That's a nice touch. I like that Isayama like connects those two dots together. And so we get all these guys on the council. It looks like maybe Moblit's one of them, but the rest of the guys I don't recognize. And then we get the quote back from episode 7 and episode 8 when Historia told Eren, when people need help, she said she'll come to the rescue no matter who or where. That's what Historia wants to do. Yeah. Y'all. Historia and Ymir are an OTP to me. But I'm not gonna lie, I really like Eren and Historia. I didn't expect this ship to come out of nowhere like it has, but I really like them together. I do. Because it seems like Eren really respects Historia, and he really cares about her opinion, and he compliments her. She's like the only woman he compliments in this series. Mikasa's over here like bending over backwards, doing 1,000 crunches a day for you, Eren. And Eren's like, yeah, we're like best friends, sister, brother relationship. Mikasa's like, what do I need to do? And Historia but Historia has done a lot for Eren. So it's not like Historia hasn't done anything. I really root for Historia and Eren. And it's like this episode especially. Because she does her Chad walk over there. I like her little shawl. I like her little orange shawl and her like little lace-up dress. And she's like, you guys are slacking. It's like, oh, it's getting dark, And then so Jean's like, she's becoming more and more like my mother. I love it. And Armin's like, some goddess. I love Jean and Armin getting more time together. It's great. So then, yeah, Eren and Historia have this moment. It's wonderful. where she's like, oh, it's like they're just talking back and forth casually. She's like, I heard your hardening experiments are going well. So I'm curious if the manga shows us more of that. We don't really see it. And he's like, if we don't hurry, they'll be back. I wanted to talk about this in the recap, but it's getting brought up now. But I'm glad it's getting brought up now. So Historia says, what would you do if you met Reiner and Bertolt and had to face them again? Because I was going to bring this up in the recap, but I'll talk about it now. So at the end of season, episodes 9 and 10 of season 2, Eren was still in like kind of psychotic rage mode Eren, where he was just like, I'm going to be the savior of humanity. Lean on me, depend on me. I'm special. Which by the end of this episode, we realize that he is special, but point in case, he was like, I'll be the savior of humanity, and so I'm going to kill both of you. And it was like, you're kind of psychotic, Eren, in this moment. And so at the time, Eren didn't really have any context to what Bertolt and Reiner had been through. But now that we've gone through season 3, and Eren's discovered about Grisha, about eating Grisha, about gaining the coordinate powers, about how Titan powers work and how everything gets transferred, and about all this guilt and emotions that he's dealing with, I was wondering, and I was going to talk about this in the recap, wondering how Eren was going to respond to seeing Bertolt and Reiner again. Because now, knowing what he knows, when Bertolt and Reiner are like, we can apologize, that's all we can do, we really can't do anything else, it's happened, it's in the past, we have to move forward, Eren kind of understands that now. And so I was very curious to know what his response would be to be seeing them again. And Historia asks what we, the audience, are all thinking. She's like, okay, well, Eren's like, I've been improving my hardening ability because we need to be prepared for when we meet them again. It's going to be inevitable. They're going to show back up. They at least are going to show back up to get Annie. We know that much. So we're going to meet them again at some point. And Historia's like, well, then what are you going to do? And then I like the sunlight shining on Eren. Eren, when the light is on him in these episodes, his features are hardened and he looks older than he's looked this entire series. But here's the thing. We've now learned from Uri in the last episode that these Titan shifters apparently age. So at the same time, I'm like, is Eren like slowly aging the more and more he becomes a Titan? Is he aging slowly, but he's a kid now, so it's not as noticeable? I don't know. But yeah, I've got no other choice but to kill them. Yeah. And Historia knows that it's true. I want to point out, and I pointed this out in the reaction, that Historia deliberately leaves Ymir out of the equation. She just says Bertolt and Reiner. She leaves Ymir out. Like, hey, Ymir wasn't one of the ones that destroyed Shiganshina, so we'll just put her over here. She's fine, right? We can let her live, right? I feel like Historia did that intentionally. It was an intentional phrasing, just saying Bertolt and Reiner. And Historia doesn't say anything. I hope we find out soon about this world and why it is like it is. So yeah, Historia wants to know the truth. I said this at the beginning of the episode that I think her and Erwin will get along in that regard. They both want to figure things out. And I think Eren does too. Eren wants to learn why Grisha did the things that he did. She's like, all that we've done, I don't want to regret any of it. Yeah, she's like, I killed my father. And this goes back to the last episode. Those images of Rod that flashed before her eyes, it's like, in that moment of the last episode, or 2 episodes ago, back in episode 9, Historia was like, well, shit, I killed my dad, but now I've seen his images of him and everything he's gone through. Was that the right thing to do? And she's kind of living out Levi's words. She's like, I don't regret my decision. I'm making the best of it. I'm helping these kids. I'm doing what I can. She's like, but I want to make sure my future decisions, I don't regret either. That they're in the same boat as well. So It's such good character development, and I love the interaction of these two characters, and then watching the kids. And Historia, she says, even the kids from the underground have been smiling lately. She's like, this can't have been the wrong choice. Yeah, so she's like, I'm doing good. I'm making the best of this situation as possible. I'm trying to redeem and do some good, despite the fact that I have changed. Historia's like, I have changed the course of history. I've killed my father. She's the only one with Reese blood left. And I want to talk about that in the recap, but I may briefly mention it here. I definitely want to discuss back on it in the recap after the next episode. But yeah, so then, yeah. And he's like, yeah, you've done great. And she blushes. And she's like, oh, he's like, you're the one who said, but he's like, though you're the one who said humanity should be wiped out. And she was like, oh, I got carried away. Like, no. So, and then Mikasa shows up and Mikasa, here's the thing. When she shows up and has that stone cold look on her face, all I could think about in the moment was she looks like one of the Titans in the walls. That stone cold look where it's just looking forward directly ahead. She looks like a Titan in the wall. And I know y'all are like, oh no, the warriors, they mean totally different things. It's not connected. I'm like, she looks like a Titan in the wall. Mikasa in that moment. Yeah, protecting Eren from Historia. Yeah. And she just grabs all three bags and she's like, well, Eren's tired from his experiments, so let's go. And Eren's like, I'm not some feeble old man. So, I was going to talk about this in the recap, but I'll just touch upon it really quickly now. Historia is the only one with Rhys blood left. She's it. That as far as we know. A lot of you have pointed out in the comments, you're like, well, the reason the coordinate powers, Eren doesn't become a pacifist. If Eren had any Rhys blood in him, he would become a pacifist because of the King Titan's will. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So it's suggested that Eren does not have Rhys blood in him because if he had even a little bit, he'd be affected by the King's will. Okay. So, but here's the big question then. If Historia is the only one left with Rhys blood in her, then there is an idea that Historia, how's that going to work? Is Historia just going to die out? Is she not going to have any kids? Is she not going to pass any of that on? Is it just going to die off with Historia? And I could see that. I could see Historia being like, no, it'll end with me, and that'll just be the end of it. But a part of me is like, would Eren and Historia get together and like have a kid? Is that going to be like something in the future that might happen? Maybe. I don't know. I really kind of ship Historia and Eren together just because Eren genuinely seems to care about her and respect her and like her. And she respects him, vice versa. They've both been through some things and they can relate to one another. It sucks because Mikasa has like devoted her life to Eren. And Eren's just like, hey, Mikasa, I care about you. But I also care about Historia in a slightly different way. And it's like, so it's curious. And I'm wondering, you would think that the Ackerman inside of her would want to be like guarding the king and the king's family. But then again, they also dissented from the king's family. So it's kind of like, it's interesting. But yeah, I just thought about that. I'm like, Historia's the only one left with Rhys blood this time. So unless she has a kid and passes it on, there's going to be once Historia dies, there is no chance, supposedly, unless there's a secret Rhys out there that we don't know about, there's no chance of the founding Titan, the king's will, carrying on. No chance. None whatsoever. So yeah. Just something like that. I'm going to file that away and talk about it in the recap. But yeah, that's a thing. So, but I do kind of ship Historia and Eren. So, but they're only like 15. So, I mean, let's be real. So we get our four guys, Deltoff and Auril and Gerald and the Roderick. We get them all in like their prison garb, which looks kind of like, again, we want to talk about parallels. They're in the white garbs. It's kind of similar to the people that were in with Ymir back in the flashback. Am I right? It's very similar to the people that were with Ymir, except the people that were with Ymir were turned into Titans and released outside the walls. Whereas these guys are going to prison. So it's a very similar, it's a parallel similar to the same events happening. It's just a little bit different, right? The military purge, considerable talent was lost from humanity's forces. Obviously, yeah, your military police being stripped away, that would cause a massive loss. But the discovery of glowing ore in the underground cavern was one of the many things gained. Yeah, okay, so we're talking about like, but despite losing all of that, here's what we gained. And we saw Sonus like just chilling out in the jail cell. Eren's hardening ability, a certain anti-Titan weapon was born. So we see Eren practicing his hardening abilities. It looks like his exoskeleton is like blocking part of the wall. That's cool. So Eren's been experimenting, trying to perfect it. Nice. Getting to where he can plug up Wall Maria. Okay. And then we see like kind of his like faux trying to plug up the wall. And it looks like it's all the hardening ability inside the crack there in the crevice. But It's not perfected, but it's enough to where the Titan can't get through, but a Survey Corps member can get there just enough to lure him in. And then, and then they cut the thing, and the Executioner from Hell. Yes, so the big battering ram. It's just a battering ram that goes straight down. Yeah, and it directly hits the nape. And the little Titan's like looking behind the wall there. Yeah, and then it causes the Titan to disintegrate. A 12-meter crushed. And then Eren's like, we did it. That we can kill the Titans without a single soldier fighting. Again, it's kind of morbid and disturbing because at the same time, they all know that these are humans that have been turned into Titans. But at this point, they can't turn. The sad thing is, they know that they're humans that have been turned into Titans, but there's nothing they can do because there's only so many Titan shifters and not enough Titan shifters for Titans. So at this point, they can't turn back. So they're just stuck in that nightmare forever until they're killed. So it's kind of sad. We'll hack down Titans all day and night. The Executioner from Hell. Oh, Hanji's just crazy. I love Hanji. Hanji's just like, alas, like all so expressive with all the gestures. We did it, Eren. I love it. Oh. And then Eren's nose bleeding is somewhat concerning because it's like he's overused his Titan powers. Eren overdoing it back in episode 10 of season 1 after Eren did the Nightmare Fuel Titan and then was like, when I change myself back and take a different form, and that's when his nose started bleeding. So that concerns me a little bit. The nose bleeding does. Makes me be like, that's not good. We never saw Uri or any of the other Titans have a nosebleed, so that concerns me a little. And then Hanji immediately is like, oh, I'm sorry. And then, Eren's like, there's nothing to apologize for. Who gives a damn if I'm tired? We got to make weapons and get going. And Levi looks concerned in that image. Levi's like, are you okay? I love that Levi in his own way is concerned for Eren. Again, showing that compassion, right? Showing that compassion. I wanted to make a note that a lot of you were commenting about the whole thing with Levi being loyal to Erwin and Mikasa being loyal to Eren and Kenny being loyal to Uri. And then I wanted to comment here that Levi is loyal to Eren. Like, Levi has kind of bent over backwards for Eren in his own way. Like, during season 2, or during season 1, like before in the episode Bite, in episode 19, Levi was defending Eren when the other Survey Corps members wanted to kill him. And Levi has shown a lot of compassion for Eren over the course of the series because he relates to Eren. But also, I'm like, is that also part of the Ackerman, like, I'm going to support you and be loyal to you because you're somebody I believe is worthy of that. So, and if you're still believing in the theory that Eren's related to royalty, then that could tie back to the Ackermans, why Mikasa and Levi are so protective over him, and why Mikasa protected Historia in that moment back in episode 8. So, I don't know. It's just interesting to note. But the whole goal is to get back to Shiga and Sheena. So I'm like, finally! It's taken us 2 seasons and 11 episodes, but we're finally maybe getting back to the basement where it all began, right? In Historia's case, it all began in that underground chapel, and it kind of did for Eren, but we're getting back to that damn basement. Okay. And so then, Marlo! I've completely, like, this whole episode overshadowed the fact that Marlo's joined the Survey Corps. What? But not Hitch. Just Marlo. So I think that's pretty important to note. It wasn't Hitch and Marlo, it was just Marlo. And Marlo's so excited. I'm like, yeah! Nervous for Marlo, because I'm like, death flags for everyone. But Marlo joining, I love it. And he's so excited. I love that. That he's just like, and John's like, you're too worked up. Only you would be happy about becoming a scout. And then, and so here's the thing, too. Sasha's like, oh, didn't Hitch join? And then Marlo's like, why would she? And Connie and Sasha are chaotic gremlins. They know. They're like, because you two are, I like that Sasha, I imagine Sasha and Connie have these, like, gossip hours where they're just, like, spilling the tea with each other. Like, if cell phones existed in Attack on Titan, you know that Sasha and Connie would have, like, group chats with each other being like, did you see this? And John would be in the group chat too, Yeah, I love it. And poor Marlo. Marlo is so dense in terms of romance and love. He's like, I don't get it. What? He's like, Hitch told me saying I wasn't cut out for it and not to act cool. And when you see her in the flashback, she's clearly flirting with him. She's clearly like, don't be cool. Don't do this. You're not cut out for it. She was clearly trying to keep him to stay. And Marlo's too dense to get what's going on. And the funny thing is, Marlo's like, well, if I stayed in the military police, I could coast along in life. But I thought she was better than that. And I told her I was wrong about her. And it's like, they're like, you shit, you idiot. She was trying to get you to stay because she likes you and she doesn't want you to die. Ugh, Marlo, my dude. But the most hilarious thing about this whole scene is that they're like, Marlo, are you stupid? And they're like, he's a bowl cut imbecile. And then Eren's like, why? Marlo said nothing wrong. Eren's just as dense. He's just as dense as Marlo. He doesn't get it. Oh, I love that. Jean commented back in episode 4 that Marlo was a lot like Eren. Yeah, they're both totally like, when it comes to ladies. Totally in over their heads. And so, yeah, Jean's like, the only ones worked up as much as you are the recruits with 0 battle experience. And that's where this little shit comes in. Yeah, this redhead with like the Sonic the Hedgehog like flip over there. He's like, what, you think you're a veteran? And Jean's like, compared to you, I am, you little shit. And then, so this guy was in the 104th Cadets too, right? Yeah. So this guy with, I don't know his name yet. We'll probably get it at some point, or we'll get it right when he dies. But he's got this like, looks like a toupee on top of his head. This swirl of red hair. This guy. And I like the Armin's in the shot too. Armin and Jean are like, really, dude? For real? And so apparently all of this regiment is going to go retake Wall Maria. And yeah, he's like, you all seem different now. Yeah, they all been through some things. And then they're like, what exactly happened? And Jean's like, oh, you want to know? And that shot of all of them where they're in the shadows and Jean's like, you want to know the truth? You ready for it? I feel like that's kind of like a subtext of Isayama being like, you want to know the truth? Okay. And this guy's like, I'll ask later. I feel like that's like a fourth wall breaking where it's like Isayama's like, do you really want to know why we're like this? But yeah. And then Connie's like, I'll see you later. Tomorrow's a prep day and I'm heading to my village in the morning. So Connie didn't go with them to see Keith, I don't think. Nah, he went to his village. I'm really sad because I want to see Connie reconnect with his mom in the village. I really want to see it. Damn it. Turning Connie's mom back to normal isn't impossible, right? So Sasha says that. And it's like, well, it's not impossible, but someday maybe. And then Eren looking away. It's like, on the one hand, you know, as far as we know right now, the only way for them to turn back into human is if they eat a Titan shifter. That's the only way we know of. So the odds of that are pretty slim. So probably not. And then I love that in this moment when Levi is talking about the fact that all the Titans were humans, Sasha is the one with her hand like on Connie's back comforting him. Sasha's like, I'm here for you. Like she's the only one on the side of the table with him. And it's so sad. And Levi's like, well, it's just speculation. But yeah, Eren knows that that's true. And he recalls the conversation with Reiner and Bertolt. And then the idea that they've been trapped inside a nightmare. What? But here's the question. Who exactly are we fighting against? That's the big question of the day, right? Who is the enemy? And Eren asks that because he's saying that Titans are Titans, just people being tormented by a nightmare. Essentially, yes. Yes, that's essentially what they are. They're just humans that have been transformed into these monsters, and all they know is the nightmare inside of them until they eat a Titan shifter, and that's it. If that even happens, or they die. It's like all instinctual. So like when we saw Rodriguez as y'all say the Turkey Titan, we see him as the Titan, and he's just burrowing to the ground, and he only goes until he sees like all the lights. The lights are humanity, and he sees all of them, and that's it. It's like, oh my God. So yeah, fun times. But yeah, and for a time, I was one of those Titans. Yeah. And so Eren acknowledging, he's like, I was one of those ones that was stuck in a nightmare for the briefest of times. And yeah, Eren's Titan form as a little kid is absolutely terrifying. It's like nightmare fuel. I'm like, Isayama, my dude. Yeah. And then Mikasa snaps him out of it. She's like, stop thinking about that. Eat your bread and soup. I gotta make sure you're healthy. You can talk after you've eaten. She's definitely in mom mode, Mikasa is. And Eren apologizes to her. But it's like, girl, Mikasa, if you'd lighten up just a wee bit. I'm like, I know that Eren cares about Mikasa. I know he does. But she is like on full-blown protect mode. She's like mother hen mode. I'm like, girl, you need to just edge off just a hair. And then Jean calls him out. Jean's like, all you do lately is mumble shit to yourself. Like, Jean's calling him out for it. You should try remembering that one guy you were telling us about. And then it's like, yes! The guy, yeah, I'm glad that Jean's bringing all this up. He's like, hey, there was a guy you were telling us about, some guy that was seen in the background that met your dad, and we need to remember him, you know? And Eren's like, I know he was my dad, but I kind of like, it's one of those things where like you know somebody, but you can't place their name. You're like, I know I should remember who that is. And it's because he had hair, he wasn't bald, and he looked younger. He's like, I feel like I've met him somewhere before. And it's like, yes, you have, it's Keith. And then, yep, like he himself has met him, not Dr. Yeager. And then Sasha's solution is like, smack your head. Smack your head and see if you remember it. I like that Jean's like, that's right, twerp. I like that Jean calls Eren twerp, and Jean also is supportive of Eren just slapping himself. If Jean had saw Eren smacking himself back in episode 9, he probably would have been pleased. Probably would have been pleased, you know. And if you stop, and you might remember if you stopped holding hands with Historia for once. Like, Jean is like, I don't think Jean is jealous of Eren with Historia, but Jean is like all about spilling the tea and giving Eren 8 kinds of shade over it. It's like, Jean, we get it. Yeah, we all see that Eren's been flirting with Historia. And get a headbutt from the commandant. And then Eren's like, no, wait, it's him. Yes! It's those eyes. Those eyes give him away. Those sunken in eyes. And then he remembered him back from episode 1. Yeah. Talking about Moses. He remembered who it was. It's like, the Cadet Corps Commandant, Keith Shadis. And then they go to the training grounds. Yes, please. He was the 12th commander of the Scout Regiment before Erwin. Yeah, y'all commented about that back in No Regrets, and I was like, oh, okay, why'd he move to the cadets? We find out this episode. Yes. And then he sees Eren. And yeah, Connie's not with him. I love that Sasha, this whole episode, Sasha is terrified of Keith. Like, it's lingered in her mind what he's done with her. She's like, nope. And I love that she's like, can't go back. I love that there's that moment where Sasha's like, I'm not doing it. And yeah. Oh my God. It's great. But yeah, they all go back to see him. Except for Connie, because Connie went to the village. And I'm hoping... My question is Connie, are we going to touch back on that? Right? Because we had Connie going to the village. Is that going to be something we touch back on? Is that going to be the start of episode 12? Us getting confirmation of Connie being at... I don't like the fact that Connie's gone off by himself to the village at the edge of Wall Rose. I don't like that. Nope, not especially not after we've got confirmation of the Beast Titan and then we're all lingering around. I don't know. Okay. Information available for public disclosure. The Executioner from Hell, a semi-automatic Titan extermination weapon constructed in part by Eren Yeager's hardening ability and the Wall. It can safely fall and eliminate Titans compared to previous methods. So yeah, it's basically just like a battering ram that they've dropped down, and it's going to crush the nape of the Titan. Yep. And prevent them from having to use any soldiers to go down there. Yeah, so technology, here's the thing. Now that the founding Titan and the Coordinate aren't able to erase people's memories, technology is starting to advance again. Like Hanji and them, they're thinking of different solutions and things. So that's interesting to note that as time goes on in this world, I'm wondering, is technology going to be able to evolve and change too as it goes? And what is that going to mean? So, interesting. Right? So yeah, there's old Keith. And then yeah, Sasha's like, I'm not sitting. I'm fine standing right here in the back of the room away from everybody. Don't want to be near you. And yeah, oh, here's the crazy thing about all this. It's only been a couple of months since season 1 started. It has been a couple of months. It's been like 90 days. What the hell? It's been like 90 days in this world, and it feels like 4 years. Oh, yeah. Insanity. Absolute insanity. I hardly recognize you all anymore. Yeah, they've been through some stuff. It's crazy. So yeah, the Hanji's getting to the point that they're trying to retake Wall Maria. And so we need to know whatever information you have before we can do that. And then, yeah, that look in Eren's eyes and Keith saying, you resemble your mother so much. And he does. Eren has his father's eyes, like the color and everything. And we'll talk about that in a second. But his features, his eyebrows. I mean, he has Grisha's hair and Grisha's color of hair and complexion and eye color. But he favors his mom a lot. And then the fangs lurking deep in your eyes are surely your father's. Oh, that line. Because it's like he's ate Grisha, so he's taking Grisha's power and memories. So it's like Grisha's a part of Eren now. Literally, not just genetically, but literally part of him. So that line, and when Eren like reacts to it, it's like the fangs lurking deep in your eyes. It's like, oh, that's so good. And he's like, I need you to tell me about him. Everything you know. And Keith's like, in the grand scheme of things, which is such a lie. And that's such, that makes me so mad about Keith and Kitty. Because both of them had so much self-doubt for themselves and self-loathing and self-doubt. Both of them did. Like, Kitty was like, I'm not compassionate, I'm trash. And it's like, no, you're not. And Keith is like, oh, I know nothing in the grand scheme of things. I'm like, you are literally the catalyst for this entire series. So, stop. Oh my God. Yeah, I can tell you a story utterly useless to humanity, which is the biggest irony because this story is the foundation of like humanity's salvation through Eren. Like, what the hell, Keith? Damn it. Yeah, the story of my past as a mere bystander. I'm like floored. From this point on, and we're like about halfway through the episode, from this point on in the story, I was like, okay, what we doing? And the funny thing is that this is all, it's kind of reminiscent. Keith meeting Grisha is kind of reminiscent of that dream scene of Eren under the tree and Mikasa waking him up. It's kind of the same thing, right? So we have this pathway outside the wall, right? 20 years ago, Wall Maria. So where Shiga Sheena is. So I wanted to bring Whiteborn Kun out specifically for this moment because it's like, okay, 20 years ago from Wall Maria. So in the grand scheme of things, if we're looking at it this way, so we have 107 years ago. Okay. So 20 years ago, it falls into the timeline. We have 170 years ago with the wall being founded. 60 years ago is the whole deal with Ymir. 40 years later is when Grisha is found by Keith. And then 15 years, so 5 years later, Eren's born. And then 10 years after that is when Shiga Sheena falls. And then we're to the present. So, okay. All right. So there's a good 5 years in between Grisha being found and Grisha and Carla getting married and having Eren. So a good 5 years passed in that time frame. But, okay, we can talk about this. So we're at Shiga Sheena. In front of the gates of Shiga Sheena, he was there. Yeah. And so we see Grisha, and Keith is like, hey, you, what are you doing here? And we find Grisha. So Grisha was found, and he looks all disheveled. Like, he is dirty and looks like he's just been scuffed up and beat up. Yeah, and he's like, how'd you get past the wall? And he's like, got that little goatee and everything. He looks a lot like Eren. Eren looks a lot like both of his parents. It's kind of crazy. Like, there's times when Eren in this series looks just like Carla, and there's times where he looks a lot like Grisha. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, there's Grisha with his little beard and stuff. And he's like, what are you doing outside the wall? He's like, are you fighting? So that's like, don't tell me you're fighting. So why does he say that? I'm so curious because here's my theory. My theory is that Grisha was turned into a Titan a long time ago, kind of like Ymir, and finally ate a Titan shifter somehow. I don't know how. I don't know what the circumstances are or what the deal is. Either one of two things happened. So either Grisha was made into a Titan that ate a Titan shifter, and that's how he got the powers that he has now when he went and attacked Frida. Or Grisha was banished, but I think it's the first one, we'll talk about this, from wherever the Beast Titan and the other Titan shifters are from. So here's the thing. Either Grisha was turned into a Titan, like a dumb Titan, and he happened to eat a Titan shifter at some point and gain those powers back and turn back to a human, and that's when Keith found him, and he's like, what's happening? I've been, because Ymir was like trapped in Titan form for like 60 years, right? So Ymir's like, what the heck is going on? So there's no telling how long Grisha was a Titan if that's the case. Or he was banished from wherever the other Titan shifters, the warrior crew, is from. But I don't think it's that. Because when he says you're fighting, and he's like, huh? Was it the truth or a lie? What? And he looks absolutely, in that moment, Grisha looks absolutely terrified. Because, yeah, Keith is questioning why he's there. And he's like, what are you doing outside the wall? And then, yeah, he's saying, don't tell me that you're all fighting. So he's talking about, is he talking about the Titans and humans fighting? Is that what he's talking about? And then, was it the truth or a lie? What? Was it a truth or a lie? So that's interesting too. And my handwriting's awful right now, so we're just going to have to deal with that. But the whole idea of, was it a truth or a lie? So, oh God, here's the thing. I don't know. We don't know enough about Grisha. This is why the unfortunate thing is Grisha's dead. So we can't get this from Grisha. The only thing I can think of is if Eren could tap into his dad's memories, but Eren doesn't know how to do that, right? Maybe he could get Historia to tap into them. Maybe he could be like, Historia, touch my shoulder. Maybe I'll access them. I don't know. But I'd be like, I'd be trying to find out, was it a truth or a lie that they're all fighting? So I'm like, is Grisha, I'm thinking out loud, is Grisha thinking, was this peace and utopia that Uri had promised all a lie? We don't know where Grisha came from in this moment. We don't know if he came from like Ymir outside the walls or if he was banished from inside the walls. We don't know Grisha's backstory, and Grisha doesn't know his backstory. So, but that whole thing of Grisha being freaked out and asking why they were fighting and if something was a truth or a lie is interesting. He couldn't remember why he was outside the walls. Yeah. So yeah, and then what a parallel, right? All his memories have been lost. So that leads me to believe too, if his memories have been lost, did the founding Titan erase them? Did Uri erase them? That's the question. Because if this was 20 years ago, this would have been either when Uri or Uri's father was in charge. So if that was, all that time ago, because Frida didn't take over until 12 years later. So I'm assuming Uri was in charge. So yeah, if Uri was in charge at the time, did Uri erase Grisha's memories? Is that how Rod... Because Rod claimed that he didn't know Grisha. He didn't know who that man was. He claimed he didn't know that man. But I question that. I question if he's telling the truth or not. And I don't know, did Uri know Grisha? Because his memories have been lost. So that leads me to believe Grisha's not an Ackerman or from the Eastern Clan, so his memories could be erased. So there's a good possibility that either he was a Titan and he forgot all of these things, or Uri erased his memory. It could actually be this. It could actually be that Uri was banished, that Uri banished him. It could be that Grisha found out too much and Uri banished him away and erased his memories for the most part. But Grisha still could become a Titan shifter. So at this point in the story, Grisha is a Titan shifter and he just doesn't know it, right? that we know of, unless during those 5 years between him and Eren being born, or within the 10 years. So either, okay, before Shiganshina fell, within this 10-year span, right? So 5 years later, and then so in this 15-year span, either, and my handwriting again is awful, either Grisha already was a Titan shifter or became one. We don't know which, but it was either one of the two. He either already was a Titan shifter during this 15-year span when he came. He was either a Titan shifter here, or in this 15-year span he became a Titan shifter. One of the two. So, I don't know. We haven't been told that yet. But yeah, I want to point out the parallels of he knew his name was Grisha Jaeger. And the parallels of Grisha being in the cell and Eren being in the cell back in season 1, the parallels between him and his father, it's not lost on me. It's all there. That's so fascinating to me. But yeah. And then Hannes, who knew it's a crime to go into Titan territory without permission. I only thought you scouts were dumb enough to go outside the walls. Hannes being so young, he reminds me of Jean there in the weirdest way. I know Jean's like not drunk or anything, but the way that Hannes' hair sits, like he looks so young there. And Hannes being like, who knew you'd get arrested for going outside the walls without permission? Because it's clearly not something that happens very often. Not a lot of people go ahead and do that because it's not a good idea. So I love that Hannes was already in the garrisons at this point 20 years ago. And that he had ties with Grisha and with Keith. And Eren being like his other kids. Like, it's just all the parallels, all the connections, all the relationships, you know. Isn't there a law that jails idiots who drink on duty? Yeah. And then, but in all honesty, Hannes is involved in this plot too. Hannes is involved in the whole catalyst for the plot as well. He's like, well, Grisha didn't hurt anybody, so why are we keeping him locked up? And Keith's like, well, I can't argue that. And Keith looks so young. And they say, let's not report it. All right. Oh, so Grisha wasn't reported. No, he was never, his name was not given to the higher ups. So they didn't know that he was within the wall, within Shiganshina. Oh, so that's such an interesting little note there. Like just the tiniest little thing. Hannes is like, Hannes having such an impact on this too. Hannes is like, well, we just won't tell anybody. This is all going to wraps. It's fine. We just won't tell anybody about Grisha being here. He didn't do anything wrong. And then the thing is, if Uri and the government know who Grisha is, he's been inside Shiganshina, and it's the perfect place for Grisha because it's in Shiganshina, it's on the outside of Wall Maria, it's in the outskirts of nowhere, it's the farthest removed from Mitris and the government, so it's the last place they'd look. And Hannes is responsible for Keith not turning in the report. And Keith looks so much younger there, and they agree. And then, yeah, so he says, what do you plan on doing now, Grisha Jaeger? And he's like, I remember something other than my name, that I'm a doctor. He's like, introduce me to hospital and I should be able to help. So he's trying to regain his memories and rebuild his life. And he's like, do you think you could teach me about this world and about the scouts? So here's the question too with this. Okay, so is Grisha telling the truth when he said his memories were erased? That's the question. Was Grisha being honest? I'm going to write this up here. Was Grisha being honest? Because if the founding Titan had truly erased his memory, had truly erased it, would he suddenly remember that he was a doctor? Or would he just not have known? Would he have even remembered his own name? And then why would he ask about this world and the scouts? So this ties back to Reiner saying she knew about our world. So Reiner talking about Ymir back in episode, she knew the secrets of our world. So we've got Reiner asking about Ymir and our world. And we have Grisha asking about Keith. Or you can kind of swap these two here. But the idea is that Reiner was commenting that Ymir learned the secrets of our world, the Titan world. And Grisha in this is asking Keith about their world, about the Scouts. So it's funny. That leads me to believe that Grisha might be from the outside, like supposedly the Beast Titan, and like Reiner and Bertolt, and like Ymir. Like he's supposedly from the outside. So, but he wanted to learn about inside. So his comment about, are you fighting? So is Grisha suggesting that he's like, oh, is there going to be a war now between people inside and outside the walls? Was it the truth or a lie? So we don't know what is being told on Reiner and Bertolt's side. We don't know what their side of the story is. We don't know what they're perpetuating as the truth and what they're saying humanity is doing. We don't know. I questioned at the start of this reaction, are there only like 7 or 8 Titan shifters, or is there a whole village of people that have, turned back from being Titans, or what? We don't know. But I'm like, Grisha seems to want to know what's been going on inside the walls, which leads me to believe that he never knew from the start. Interesting. About all of you. Yeah, about all of you. Like about this world. He truly knew nothing at all of their world. Yeah. About this world or anything. Except that he was a doctor, And so, and yeah, he's learning about everything. He's like, although there's economic inequality, there's peace within the walls. So, yeah, God, Grisha looks so much like Eren. He really does. I know it's his dad, but like you can just see it. So Grisha's putting 2 and 2 together to be like, okay, here's what's been going on. Okay. Yeah. At least you don't live in constant fear of Titans. He's like, that's good. Yeah, huh. And Keith, that's good, right? You're one of them, huh? And I love this discussion because Keith is like, within these cramped walls, as long as there's food and alcohol, some think that's good enough. But then Keith says, not once have they stopped to think of how wide the world might be. So Keith has Eren's viewpoint. Like, it's so crazy because Keith wanted to get with Carla. Like, you could tell in this episode that Keith wanted to get with Carla. And Keith has the same worldviews that Eren has. And it's almost putting Keith as like a surrogate father figure for Eren. Because like Eren inherits the same will that he has, even though it's not his own kid. It's crazy. And then Grisha's like, well then, is that why you venture outside the walls? Because is that what the Scouts do? He's like, yeah. He's like, it seems foolish, right? And then I love that Grisha says, not at all. Nah. The Scouts are wiser and braver than anyone else in the walls. And that's your existence signifies the freedom in our souls. You are the pride of humanity. And that just like, Keith is like, pride? Really? Are you really, huh? He's like, yes. And in that moment, Grisha's just like Eren too, with the eyes and everything, and the resolve. Yeah. So Grisha's suggesting, he's like, no, he's like, the Scouts have the right idea. So he's like, the Scouts have the right idea. You guys are pursuing outside the walls like you should. He's like, you're braver than anybody else inside the walls. He's like, you're the pride of humanity. So that's making me wonder, okay, if Grisha is in fact a Titan shifter. So the Titan side, I'm wondering if, I just got lazy and I wrote too big, So Grisha's views that the Scouts are in the right? That the Scouts are in the good mindset and that freedom is a goal, right? And that's kind of what Keith says the Scouts are doing. They're like, they want to go beyond the wall because why wouldn't you, right? And so I love the idea that Eren's mentality and Eren's resolve is based on the ideals of both of his parents and Keith. It's kind of amazing, right? Because you have Eren, right? And Eren's whole resolve is a combination of, you have Grisha that is talking about freedom from beyond the walls, and that ties into what Keith is saying as well. So Grisha and Keith are saying that. And then later on we have Carla saying that you are special. Oh my God, that line is amazing. Special because you're born in this world. That line. So Eren's whole resolve is a combination of both of his parents. It's like Isayama, just let me kiss your feet right now. So I'm curious though, with Grisha's views of freedom beyond the wall, that the walls are not needed. What I'm curious about is if that belief that Grisha has is tied to what the Titan shifters, the warrior crew, are all getting at too. That they're like, no, we don't need these walls. You guys don't need walls. What if the Titans are trying to liberate humanity from the walls and humanity just doesn't realize it? Because then you have over here, you have Uri and the founding Titan. I'm just getting the vibe that the founding Titan dissented from the other Titan shifters and was like, no, the walls are needed to create this peace. To create peace, you need the birdcage. And Grisha, the scouts, and perhaps the Titan shifters are suggesting that peace is not freedom in this case, right? So, interesting. But then we have Carla showing up. And she's like, oh, you're recruiting for the scouts, are you? And he's like, no, not this time, Carla. No. And then Grisha's saying, I'd never be suited for that kind of work. Being a scout takes someone special. You have to be a chosen one. And she's like, oh, is that right? And that gets Keith's attention, the idea of being a chosen one. And he says that was the first time anyone told me that. Yeah, that was inside the wall was too cramped for me. So he's like, I wanted to get outside and see something. And the idea of this like babyface Titan is like, ugh. But yeah, so Grisha establishing that Grisha's like, I would not be cut out for the Survey Corps. Kind of like Eren. That he's just like, I'm not special. I'm not a chosen one. So that kind of ties into the idea that the whole thing about warriors versus soldiers, are the warriors chosen ones to be the Titan shifters, right? Because it seems like to be a Titan shifter, you have to be chosen, right? If you're the founding Titan, you have to be chosen because you're part of the Reese family. But in the case of Reiner and Bertolt, there has to be a reason, right? So, curious. Very curious the way he worded that. It's interesting. But yeah, so Keith, that inspires Keith. And then we go in front of the government and we see the current, like the 11th Scout Regiment commander. And Keith is just like, if I was commander, I'd show results. So Keith has all this ambition. And Keith is like, this guy's getting nothing done. And these idiots have tiny brains and I can do so much better. He's like, I'd accomplish so much even they would understand. And they would and everyone would have to acknowledge me. And when he says have to acknowledge me, it cuts straight to Carla. So Keith had a thing for Carla. Tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme. Keith wanted to get Carla's attention, but was not meant to be, sir. Nah. Not gonna happen. Because we get the plague. And it's Keith holding, it's just the fact of Keith. I get such Professor Snape vibes from Keith because if you've ever read Harry Potter, Snape loved Lily. And Lily ends up marrying someone else. And Snape just has this unrequited love for her forever. And Keith seems to be in the same boat. Like, he loved Carla, but she fell in love with someone else. And so he just harbors this, like, unrequited love for her all this time. And he projects that onto Eren then and wants to protect Eren. And it's like, oh, I should have seen it coming. But I didn't see it at all. Yeah. And it's like, she's got the plague going around. Can you help her? And then Grisha's like, yeah, put her over there in the rear bed. And I love that Carla grabs his arm and says, my parents have it too. And he says, I'll help everyone. And then he grabs her arm and like holds her there. And so it's also a beautiful moment of tying in Eren's personality to his parents, because you have on the one end, Carla was more worried about someone else than herself, which ties to Eren's compassion of caring for other people beyond himself. So you have that. But then you also have Grisha saying, don't worry, I'll help everyone. And that ties to Eren's personality too. So it's like he's such a combination of his parents, like their mentalities, their emotions, their rationales, their ideologies. It's like, God, Isayama, just showing how much Eren takes from both of them. I'm like obsessed with this episode. It's so good. And then Hannes saying my wife as well again. Okay, so Hannes is married. Good to know. That makes me sad though, because Hannes says his wife's okay. So we didn't get to see Hannes' wife when he died. No, I don't like hearing that note. And then, yeah, Dr. Yeager, thank you. And Keith sees the image in front of him. He sees Hannes crying, and then she hugs him. Carla hugs Dr. Yeager. And he's like doing the head pats too. And Keith is jealous. Yep. And then we see the juxtaposition of this scene is so damn good. It's the juxtaposition of this scene of them saying, congratulations, you've been appointed as Scout Regiment Commander. So it's like, it's Keith can't have it all, right? He can't have it all. He can't be both commander and married to Carla. So in the end, it's kind of like Erwin. He chooses, Keith doesn't choose to fight for the truth like Erwin does, but he chose that freedom, the freedom of getting beyond the walls. He became a Scout Regiment Commander, that ambition. But in choosing that ambition, he's congratulated. And then it cuts to him in like the regular clothing, and it cuts to him watching Grisha and Carla get married. It's like you can't have it both. And it's like it goes from congratulations to Keith getting the commanding position to cutting to Carla looking absolutely freaking beautiful with Dr. Yeager in his little vest, his sweater vest. Oh, and she's like blushing. And yeah, it shows both of them together being congratulated. Like, that's so sweet. Ugh. And then we hard cut to their base getting destroyed and Keith having to deal with all of the defeats over and over again. And then like it shows him like aging and Keith just like getting worn down by all the stress and coming back and saying those morons charged straight into death. And he's always the only one who lives. And nobody on Erwin's squad has died yet. So yeah, so poor Keith not being special, he can't think up any crazy strategies. Like, he had all this ambition, but he didn't have anything to back it up. So he went charging into Titan territory, but he had no strategy or stuff. Whereas Erwin is smart and has the prodigy ingenuity, like the intelligence that he's thinking of, like the flares, everything. And everybody's like, well, he should be the commander now instead of Keith. And I wonder if there was one guy in the horseback there. One guy has hood up so you couldn't see him, but he looked taller than Levi. But the other guy had like the longer hair, and I wonder if it was Mike. Could have been. And then Keith hearing all of that gossip. He's like, someone special. A chosen one. And then, yeah. And then that's when Carla sees him. With baby Eren! And seriously, Eren has a lot of his mom's features. Eren basically has the face and eye shape of his mother, but has Grisha's hair color and eye color. That's like that. It's like he's the perfect combo of both of them. It's kind of insane. And then Keith's like, I didn't even realize he had a kid. And he's like, who's this child? And she's like, this is Eren. He's our boy. You never got the news. Damn, that's like the biggest blow. And then Eren like grabs her hair and is eating on it. And then Carla says, do you intend to keep this up until you die? So what you can tell that she was concerned about him, and that ties into her being concerned about Eren later on when Eren wants to join the Survey Corps. She's like, you keep on having these missions and you're about to die. She's like, are you just going to keep on doing this? And he gets offended by it and gets mad at her. And she's like, she basically says it's about time that you quit. Like, and you could tell she's coming from a place where she cares about him, and that's why she says it. But he takes it as an insult. And he's like, do you know why people live and die without doing a damn thing? Because they lack imagination. for their whole lives for nothing. They're not ashamed of a life that produces nothing but shit. They can't accomplish greatness. No, they can't even understand it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he just goes off on her and says, so a girl who flirts with every man in sight. And that's the part I was like, oh, Keith, good for absolutely nothing besides pouring drinks. Will never. And he starts crying. So he gets onto her. He like insults her. He's like, you're just some girl in a tavern that was pouring drinks and flirting with any guy that would give you a time of day. It's like, you're not great. You're not special. And he's projecting onto her his own frustration because he's realizing, in that moment of giving the arm back. And then you see Mikasa and Eren in the background in the future. Normal people will accomplish nothing. Yeah. And then you see him next to Erwin, and then he asks Erwin to take over as commander. And we finally get confirmation, because like way back in No Regrets, I was like, why did Keith leave? And now we know that Keith realized, he's like, I'm nothing special. I'm just normal. So I'm not going to be able to make the change that I thought I would. I'm not going to be that special person that can do that. Damn it. Damn it. And he asks Erwin to take over. And of course, Erwin's like, I want the truth, so yes. He's like, special people do exist. And we see Mike in the background there, along with Nanaba. Oh, no wonder you guys ship Nanaba and Mike. No wonder y'all ship them. There they are in the background together. Holy shit. Okay. All right. I see now. I see why you ship them now. Those screens together. I was never one of them. Which is so sad, because I'm like, Keith, why did I not realize that simple fact? I'm like, Keith, you've had so much impact, and he doesn't even realize it. It's like, holy crap. And then at this time, he was still in the Survey Corps. He had just stepped down as commander. And they're like, Shiganshina was decimated. And us and Trost are next. Okay. And then everybody starts freaking out and panicking and running. And Keith gets tossed aside. Right? And that's when Grisha stumbles across him. I know now. It was your fault. So, yeah, so he blames Grisha. It was your fault. So the question is, was Grisha responsible? How much does Keith know? Does Keith really know that Grisha took the coordinate powers? Or what? Because Grisha running into him and finding him, and Grisha being surprisingly calm for having just, because at this point Grisha has killed Frida and done all that, right? Yeah. And then they go together to find Eren. Oh my god, this scene where they found him. Was your mother not with you? Oh my god, so Grisha didn't even know. Grisha and Keith didn't know Carla died until this moment. Oh my god. Oh, Isayama, that's just cruel. That's just cruel at this point. That's like that's just like taking the knife and just kneading it in. He's like, where was your mom? Because he can see Mikasa's there. And then he says, Dad. Yeah. And that's when they both find out that a Titan ate her. And Keith just collapsing, because that was the love of his life. And then Grisha's face is so hard. Like, it's just like that. Keith is emotionally expressing his distraught at Carla being dead. Grisha is like Levi cold fury. Like, you don't see his eyes. But the look on his face with like the lines and everything, it's just like, ugh. And then that's when Grisha says, Eren, you're going to avenge your mother. You have to. And he's like, I know you can. Mm-hmm. And Keith's like, what? And he's like, where are you going? And it's just like the ED. And you want to call back to Historia and Rod. And just like Historia and Rod was like, no one can see this ceremony but us. Grisha said the same thing. He's like, don't follow us. God. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And then you don't see, in a classic anime move, you don't see the eyes. You don't see Grisha's eyes through the shades. You just don't see them. Nope. So, Keith's like, why don't you just do it and avenge Carla? Why don't you? Is it because you're special? Unlike me? What if your kid is different too? He might not be a chosen one either. God, and then we're talking about like the Reese family and you being chosen, and Eren's not of the Reese family. He's not. And Keith brings up a good point. He's like, why don't you avenge Carla? Are you not special? Right? Are you gonna curse someone else now? Oh, that line, because I don't think Keith realizes that, yes, Grisha is about to curse Eren with the power of the coordinate and being a Titan shifter. And Keith doesn't realize it. Or maybe he does. It just, that line, and then Grisha turning to him and saying, this child is not like you. He's my son. And yeah, and those eyes just look. He's like, he's my son. You stay out of it. Oh my God. Oh. And then that's when you saw Thunder and Keith went to go see what it was. And that's when he found Eren. And that's when he took him back. And he took him back to Mika said, Armin, I carried your unconscious body back with the key to the shelter. It was Keith, and he walked away. Damn it! And that's why Mika said didn't suspect anything, because she didn't know. And that's everything I know, and you have the key. Huh. And Eren's like, so that's it? It's like, yeah, that's it. Oh. Now we know the real reason that you resigned. Yep. Not to it. And Hanji. So Hanji gets really interesting in this moment. Hanji's saying, you didn't resign to atone for the soldiers that you killed. This is interesting. The way Hanji views it. It's because you realized you were never special. That's the childish reason you're here. So Hanji's like, you mean to tell us that you didn't resign because you felt guilty and were atoning for the lives you took? You resigned because you were selfish and self-loathing and just didn't think you were special? Like, Hanji gets mad here. And you can tell that Levi's like, hey, Hanji, he's going through a lot now. And Hanji's like, screw your inferiority complex. You don't run from reality. Mm-hmm. Damn. Isn't that what vowing to give our hearts was all about? And she does this, like, the thing with Sasagi, like, what? And Eren's like, just stop, too. Like, it just, the commandant was right. I was never special or anything. So I appreciate that Hanji in this moment is at least offering that perspective, being like, dude, you resigned because you just felt bad for yourself. You didn't resign because you were, feeling bad for everyone that died on your behalf. So, and Hanji's kind of calling Keith out, being like, you dedicated yourself. You should keep on dedicating yourself, even if you're not special. But Levi and Eren are like, nah, it's cool. I'm glad they show Hanji's perspective, but I get Levi and Eren are like, nah, he did what he had to do for his own reasons. Let the man be. And Eren's saying, I was never special or anything, but I'm the son of a special man. That line, that idea. Eren's like, I'm not special, but my father was. So I'm his son. And I ate him. So he's with me now. Yeah. That's all it is. And I love that Keith kind of takes a second, because to Eren's like, my dad was special, but I'm not. So, it kind of goes back to what Eren's been thinking the last 4 or 5 episodes. But then, I'm sorry, y'all. This moment here where Keith is recounting what Carla said to him is like, it is the crux, and I'm so glad he told Eren this. I am so glad he told Eren this, saying, your mother, she said this. And then we flash back saying, is it wrong to not be special? Because it was right at the moment where Keith was crying, saying, who are you to get on to me? And he's about to cry, and she's like, there's nothing wrong with not being special. She's like, I don't think that way. And I love that Carla looks at Eren and says that my child, it's fine if he's never great. She's like, look how cute he is. She's like, he doesn't have to be better than anyone. And I love that Keith tells him this. I love that Eren gets on the horse and looks up at the sky, and Keith told him what his mother's words were. He's already special because he was born into this world. And Eren looking up at the sky and realizing that, oh my God, yes. It's like, it's such an affirming moment, a self-affirming moment for him, because it's like, no, you're special. It ties back to episode 12. It ties back to the resolve, to, oh God, episode 13 was, what was episode 13? In season 1, I can't remember the name of it, but episodes 12 and 13, when Armin was confronting Eren and being like, why do you want to go outside the walls? And Eren's like, because I was born into this world. It's my privilege. It's my right. And it ties to his father saying that, yes, it is your right to be free and to go beyond the walls. You should want to do that. And it ties to his mom saying that you are special because you're born into this world. The fact that you're born in this world makes you special. It's like, and it ties to the season 2 OP with the hand clutching the baby's hand. It's like, it's so damn good. And then to top it all off, Keith says, and you, just like your father wanted, you chose to set ablaze your life, which will burn to ashes outside the walls. But here's the way he says that, the way he phrases that. So like Carla, Eren leaves with the knowledge that he's special because his mother said he was born. And then Keith says, like your father wanted. So he says here, yeah, to set ablaze your life, which will burn to ashes outside the walls. So his dad wanted him to go outside the walls. Are we tying back to... Don't think I haven't forgot about the first scene in episode 1 where Eren's by some ocean. Don't think I haven't forgot about that. I haven't. I'm waiting for it to all come full circle either this season or next season. But for your life to burn ablaze outside the walls. And that tying to the fact that Eren's a Titan shifter, his life is going to burn ablaze. Because if it's like Uri and you're aging as you become a Titan more and more, Eren's going to burn through his life. But his father wanted him to do it outside the walls. And that's where we're headed. And then to top it all off, we get confirmation that Keith was the one that screwed up with his gear. He messed up the gear to get him to use the ODM gear. And Eren still managed. He's like, in the end, I couldn't change a single thing. It was fate, Eren's will, his resolve to keep on moving even though the gear was broken. Yep. And the light shining down like the Titan light. Ah! Yep. Okay. I'm a mere bystander. Oh, I'm looking at the gear. And then we have our troops going back. They're all riding back. They're getting ready. We're going to that damn basement. It's all gearing up. Oh my God. Oh my God. Cheers, Isayama. Cheers, my dude. These last 2 episodes have been freaking phenomenal. This whole second half of this season, from episode 6 on, it's been so good. It's been so good. It's been so good. I'm so glad we get confirmation about Keith. That makes me feel so much better. Like, yes, please. Thank you. We get information about how Eren got back, about Grisha, the whole connection with Carla and Keith and Grisha. Grisha's got some shadiness that we don't know about, but it's all coming out in the wash. Eren's whole resolve is genetic. He's inherited from his parents, both of them. I'm amazed. It's so good. So good. So yeah, this episode was great. But the season finale is next. So I feel like these last 2 episodes have wrapped up 2 important characters. We've had Keith wrapped up, and we have a Kenny wrapped up. So I feel like we're wrapping these characters up. Here's the thing. Keith was like Hannes, part of the old world. So we've all come back full circle and gotten all these things from season 1 explained. And Kenny was tying back to like Levi's whole past. So I feel like in the last 2 episodes, we've had Levi's past acknowledged and gotten a lot more backstory with him via Kenny. And we've gotten a lot more with Eren's backstory via Keith talking about his parents. So that's been good. We've got both of those kind of tied together for Eren and Levi. So we're leading to our final episode, season 3, part 1. Y'all voted. I did a poll on Patreon to see when I would watch the OVAs. And y'all voted for me to wait until after season 3 was over to watch the OVAs. So I am. But I am going to watch episode 12 this weekend, coming weekend. I'm going to watch episode 12, the final episode. It was also voted on that I'm not going to watch the mid-post credit scene. I'm going to wait till after episode 18 to watch that. Because y'all told me I'm not going to watch the OP for season 3 part 2 until after episode 18 too. Apparently episode 18 is a crazy episode, so fun times. I also realized doing the math that episode 18 is the 6th episode of season 3 part 2. Rule of 6. Yay. So there's that. But don't hype me up anymore. Don't spoil me on anything. I just was doing the math and was like, funny that we can't watch the OP for season 3 part 2 until after 18. Episode 18 can't watch the mid-credit scene until after then, and it's the 6th episode. Just funny how that works out. But so after episode 12, I am going to be doing the recap that following Friday. So before we start season 3 part 2. So fun times. I had no clue what to expect of this episode, and it completely blew my mind and went places I didn't even expect it to. So who knows what will happen in the next episode? Who knows? Who knows? So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Please let me know down below what you thought. Please don't spoil me. If you got spoilers, just put them in a comment tag and like skip 8,000 spaces and then comment as you will so that I don't get spoiled. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving if you're in the US. And I'll talk to y'all again real soon with more Attack on Titan. Bye.